Hi, I'm Duncan, and I'd like to welcome you to my latest YouTube channel feature. Many of my features have been done about movies, tending to be science fiction and horror. But I've also love other genres. And when in 1981, at 18, I went to Brooklands Technical College to do an AO film studies, which is supposed to be between an O level and an A level. Um, I was told we were going to study for our genre the Western, and my heart sort of, I was a bit disappointed because I'd hoped we could do either horror or science fiction. But I have always liked westerns, and after doing the course, my love for the western genre had increased dramatically. And I'm here to talk about today a classic western made in 1939 called Stagecoach, and it was directed by the legendary director John Ford, who was having a very difficult time trying to get this movie off the ground. None of the major studios were interested because westerns were not considered to be the in thing, mostly through the whole of the 30s. That had been the case. And they were very unhappy about his choice of one of the main leads, a certain young actor called John Wayne, as the Ringo Kid. That didn't seem to ignite a lot of enthusiasm. At one stage, John Ford thought he'd made it when David O. Selznick showed um, quite a lot of enthusiasm for the film, but that soon waned because John Ford he felt was dragging his heels and not getting on with things. Eventually, an independent producer, George Wanger, uh, decided to produce the movie, and it's based on a novel called Stage to Lordsburg. I can't remember who wrote it, but the writer, the guy who wrote it, was he wrote many Western novels, um, and the picture has basically a load of incredibly well acted characters. Um, John Wayne proved to be very good in the movie. He had started been in a movie called The Big Trail in 1930, which was a massive Western epic. And he'd given a reasonably good account of himself, although he showed inexperience. And he spent the rest of the 30s appearing in B movies, Saturday morning pictures, basically learning his craft. And by 1939, he was ready for stardom, and the film turned him into a star. It's also got Thomas Mitchell as Dr. Boone, the drunken doctor, who he won an Oscar for his performance in the film. We've got Hatfield, a gentleman gambler from the South, who's played by John Carradine, who is a wonderful actor, often in offbeat roles. But when he finds the right parts, it's richly rewarding. We've got Dallas, played by Claire Trevor. She's basically the local prostitute. And then we've got Buck, who is the driver of the stagecoach, played by Andy Devine. He's a wonderful character, and he's actually very intelligent, but unfortunately most people don't tend to realize that he's intelligent. They tend to think of him as being not very savvy at all, but he's a lot more going for him than people give him credit for. You've got Mrs. Lucy Mallory, who's played by Louise Platt. She's the wife of an officer in the American cavalry who hears that there's been a skirmish, and that her husband may have been injured. She's also got a problem because she's quite heavily pregnant. We'll talk about that a little bit later. We've got Marshal Curly Wilcox, who's played by George Bancroft, who's a very, very good sheriff. And he rides shotgun up with Buck on the stagecoach. We've then got Ellswood Henry Gatewood, who's played by Benson Churchill. He's basically a banker who really puts money before humans. Not a very likable character. Then we've got Lieutenant Blanchard, who's played by Tim Holt, who was Hollywood's not been very kind to him. He tends to have small parts in big movies and big parts in lesser movies. Probably his part in character in The Treasure of Sierra Madre is probably one of the highlights of his career, and he's very good in this, although only in a small part. Luke Plummer, who is John Wayne's enemy, is again not a big part but very memorable. Is played by the legendary Tom Tyler. Oh yes, I think it's Ernest Haycock was the writer of the stage to Lordsburg. As I say, he was a very, very big Western writer at the time. The movie starts off with a cracking bit with the telegraph. Somebody's cut the lines to the telegraph, but there's one word that comes out. Geronimo, who has jumped the reservation, and you don't see him as a character in the film. You used to see the film's a bit hard on him actually, but the Apaches are around the stagecoach. You have to go at your own risk. Hatfield, the gentleman gambler, decides on a wager to go in the stagecoach to protect Mrs. Mallory. You've got Mr. Gatewood, the banker, who looks like he's very shifty and is up to no good. He's not a very nice guy, as I said before. There's a bit in the film where Dallas offers him. She's just had a drink, and she offers him the water pouch, and he declines it like the water's contaminated because of her what she's been her career. Although we know that she's trying to change her ways. Doc Boone has been chucked out of town because he hasn't paid his rent. Says to his landlady, "Are you the face that sank 1,000 ships?" And he goes. He and Dallas. Dallas says to him, "Why do I have to go? Do I have to go? Leave the town because the ladies' Law and Order Guild." Are chucking her out, and the doctor as well. And the doctor says to Dallas, "We are victims of a foul disease called social prejudice, my dear." Everybody gets on the stagecoach except for the Ringo Kid, because he comes in a bit later. He comes in. He's lost his horse. He's jumped the pan. He's got out of prison because where he's been kept. He's lost his horse, and comes to the Stagecoach, and Ford gives him the most wonderful, wonderful introduction, with the camera just coming straight towards him and up to a close up while he twiddles his rifle. Buck is delighted to see him, but Sheriff the sheriff is not so keen to see him, and says, "You're under arrest, kid." So he gets put in handcuffs, put into the coach, and off they go. Um, it turns out that he's on a mission to meet with the Plummer brothers because they killed his brother, and he forms a relationship with Dallas in a scene where they've come to a wagon station, and they're having a meal. Gatewood sees that Mrs. Mallory is sitting very near Dallas, so he says to her, "There's a window. There's a little more air in the window," and she moves her seat. The Ringo Kid thinks it's because of him that they've moved, but it isn't. It's because of Dallas, who proves her worth later on in the movie when starts to be Mrs. Mallory goes into labour and has her baby, and there's a wonderful scene where Dallas brings the baby wrapped up in a blanket to meet the rest of the cast, who all stand like they were in church. It's a lovely scene. There's going to be they're not sure whether they should carry on and leave the wagon station and try to complete their journey, or they should stay where they can and defend the wagon station. They opt for going on, and there'll be there will be a skirmish with the Indians. We know there's going to be somewhere along the line, because if the the conclusion to the Indian skirmish is very cliched, probably by today's standards, as many of the things that were in the film are considered cliche. But Stagecoach was the film that had it, that did these things for the first time. There's an altercation with the Plummer brothers. Don't want to spoil what happens. I know it's difficult with a movie like this not to give quite a lot away. The shooting of in Monument Valley is just superb, and there are people I'm not going to be able to mention here but there's a gentleman by the name of Burt Glennon who was in charge of lighting, and he was very imaginative with the lighting in the movie, particularly as the Stagecoach goes through Monument Valley. They did it at a time of the day when there's going to be lots of hot sun, but lots of shadow as well, and it creates quite a almost supernatural effect. And of course, Monument Valley would be used by John Ford for many films during the rest of his career. Ford had already had a pretty prominent career. He started around 1917. He'd already made some fine westerns, including Straight Shooting, The Three Godfathers, and The Iron Horse. That had been up to about 1917, up to 1924. He spent the last almost 15 years making a lot of movies for the studios that he wasn't particularly excited about. He clearly wanted to go back to westerns. So Stagecoach was such a success that it brought the western back as an important genre in the eyes of the big studios. And he would make many westerns. Drums Across the Mohawk, My Darling Clementine, a remake of The Three Godfathers with John Wayne, The Searchers, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, Fort Apache, and my personal favourite, Sergeant Rutledge with Woody Strode. Um, his he had won 4 Oscars as director during his career, but none of them were for westerns, and his westerns are what he'll always be remembered for. He said to the press, "My name is John Ford. I make westerns." And one of the films that he had won an Oscar for Best Picture was The Informer, which is about the IRA. Of course, a very, very different IRA in those days to what became in the 1970s. I'm not here to get into politics, but it was a great film. I haven't seen it yet, but it had Victor McLaglen in it. I think who's always a welcome actor, and it got him one of his 4 Oscars. I could could go on a lot more about the movie, but I would say I don't want to give more away. It's a great movie, so do give it a try. On any, I see it's on a platform. I think you'll enjoy it. Anyway, if you enjoyed this feature, then please take the like button. If you'd like to subscribe to my channel, I'd love to have you aboard. If you want to forward this to a friend, then that would be great. And you can click a bell, I believe. They'll tell you when my next blog is out. So this is John Ford's Stagecoach 1939. Great movie. Do give it a whirl. Anyway, God bless.